Hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Today I'm so excited. I have a super expert of finance. His name is Peter, and he's the founder of Conversation of Money, which is an amazing podcast, and you can find it also on YouTube. He also has his Instagram account. So if you need to learn something about more about finance or saving or investing, this is the guy to go. He will make everything very simple and super logical. So I'm a big fan of him. I've been following him for months and I'm learning so much. Especially if you're based in the UK, he can also give you advices on specific things to do in the UK. He is a personal finance expert, and he's a qualified financial advisor. Welcome, Peter.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me on your show. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for being in this show. So, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm glad that we're coming out of like lockdown now and things seem to be going back to normal. I'm on the high risk list, so I've had to shield for an extended period of time. I think there was a period where I didn't see anybody for about 3.5 months. So being able to get back to normal now is actually quite refreshing. It's nice.
Oh my gosh. You know, that old conversation about introvert and extrovert. Well, I don't believe if somebody's not shy, they're extrovert and opposite. I believe it's how you charge your batteries. I can speak easily with people I don't know. So I appear extrovert, but I'm super introvert. So I really enjoy spending time home, and I don't miss much. I didn't miss much going out, seeing friends. But after a while, it takes its toll. And I really miss hugging my friends. I miss chatting with them and holding hands. I don't know. Those are the things I really miss the most. So it's human contact, because we are all tribal people. We are always been in communities. And so I say, must have been hard all that time by yourself. Did you manage to Zoom calls with your friends?
I mean, I'll speak to my friends and stuff like that, but I am very much kind of like, I like to be I like my own space. I really, really do. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I am kind of used to it. I've been on my own since I was like 17 years old. I don't really have any family here. So I'm used to being independent, as it were. My partner, on the other hand, Ilona, she's Polish. She's kind of like the opposite to me. She likes the interaction with people. She likes like being out and about. The reason why we moved to the countryside is because she likes the outdoors. So it was a bit more of a struggle for her than it was for me. But I guess you're Italian, and you know, Italian life is all about family and being in that close knit kind of like group, isn't it?
Yes. In fact, I was supposed to fly to Italy sometime in April or May. I was like, I'm not sure to when to buy the ticket, and then the world stopped. And I haven't been this long without traveling to Italy. I haven't been to Italy since Christmas. And well, when I used to live in Uganda, of course, I didn't travel this often to Italy, but in London, I will go to Italy 6-7 times a year back home. And I haven't been since Christmas. So it's like, oh, but also, as you said, we are very family oriented. So here in London are my family. And so I'm very close to them.
So where in Italy are you from?
Well, when I say Italian, it's a bit like I'm half Italian, half Finnish. But I grew most of my life in Italy, and most of my time in Italy I was in Milan. But I also I lived so much abroad. When I was a kid, I lived in England. I lived in Austria, in Italy. When I was an adult, I lived in France, in Uganda. I lived in the UK, and I've spent so much time in the US because my mom lives there. So I would spend my summers in the US. So I used to be a cabin crew. So I have a wide experience of traveling.
So you travel very, very much. You've traveled a lot.
Yeah, but that's the interesting bit, because as you're an expert of money, I have noticed how we are all the same. We tend, maybe Japanese probably are good with money. I don't know about their culture on money, but definitely Americans United States people put everything on credit card. Here in the UK, credit card. Italians don't put much on credit card because that's not very much our culture, but people still go on debt. They go to get loans, and if they don't get a loan from a bank, they can use these sneaky people that gives like 500% interest on a loan. But yeah, it's interesting how private schools usually around the globe teach different things to kids in state school. I went to state school in Italy, and they're very good. Italian state schools are very good. But in a private school, they will teach you, if you have 5 companies and you sell 3, how many companies are you left with? Instead, we are like, if somebody gives you 5 apples and you give 2 away, that's a very different mentality. Oh, I need to give 2 away. I don't sell them. I just give them away. And as you said in a podcast, it's not the fault of teachers, because you can't teach what you don't know. And that was a very good point.
Absolutely. I think ultimately, so one of my big phrases is content and context. Context is important. Context is everything. So one of the things that I find all over social media now, Instagram, YouTube, even on TikTok now, right? There's a lot of people just spewing out just content, like just saying things. And it's like, okay, but you're not really giving any context around it. And the context is the difference between, I make a broad statement like, everybody needs to save it into an ISA. Okay, that is factually true. But when do you save into an ISA? What kind of ISA do you save into? At what point are there other considerations around paying into an ISA? That context is really, really important. And oftentimes people who just spew out a load of stuff because it's topical and it's something that should be said, don't really provide the context for people to make an informed decision. So that for me is the biggest differentiator that I try and make sure that I push, certainly on Instagram, certainly on YouTube. I try to give a little bit more context so people actually understand what it actually means. So like in that example, you were saying, sell businesses, right? Business provides a little bit of context, because then you can ask, okay, so what is a business? And it leads on to a further conversation, whereas it's apples. Well, every kid knows what an apple is. It's a piece of fruit.
And they're cheap.
And they're cheap. Give it away. When you say business, you provide a little bit more context around, okay, we can have a further conversation here to impart some knowledge.
I see. Yeah, very good point. And as a financial expert, because you have been doing this for you have been working with money for over 15 years, right?
Yeah, so 15 years in financial services across retail banking, corporate banking, and wealth management, basically. So I started off as a cashier in a building society. So I've worked in retail banks with one-on-one personals, people, I should say. And then I moved into business, which is corporate banking, really. So I was working with businesses, helping them finance boats, cars, machinery, all those kind of things. And I moved into wealth management. And I've been in wealth management ever since.
Mm-hmm. And when you interact with people, what is the resistance that you find in people, despite their money background and stuff? There is some common traits that.
Yeah, I think most people are just, they're worried about not knowing what they're doing. Like, money is unnecessarily complicated or difficult. Let me actually just rephrase that. Financial services, the industry that I work in, make money unnecessarily complicated and difficult. It's actually very, very simple.
Oh.
And the common theme that I often find with people is they feel too confused, like, oh, it's going to be way too complicated. And oftentimes they feel that if they ask a question, they're going to be ridiculed for not knowing the answer to that question, because a lot of the times there are base questions. And I always start from the point of, there is no such thing as a stupid question. It's like, you're a therapist, right? And I could ask you a very, very basic question about therapy. that's your field of expertise. Now, to you, it's common knowledge, but to me, I'm a complete newbie. I have no idea. So it is relative. And I think oftentimes people are confused. They're a little bit reticent because it's going to be really, really confusing. And I think sometimes people just feel that it's really scary to front up to money and address that, okay, maybe I need to do certain things to get my finances in order.
That's a very good point. And I've noticed the difference that now the taboo is breaking in mental health. So people are okay to ask things that they might think, is it stupid or not? But usually they will ask. They will sometimes ask for me permission, or see if they trust me to ask me questions that might be embarrassing, or like just like they don't know, that they are confusing. But it's very interesting because, yes, about money, it feels like we are supposed to know, but we don't know, because as me, I don't have a background in finances, and I'm literally trying to figure out now how it works, because I'm fed up to be overwhelmed by the topic. But it's very true. I will feel a bit embarrassed to ask a question if I think that is a stupid question. Why do you think there is this taboo?
I think that there are a couple of things in my mind. First and foremost, and different countries have different approaches. So, for example, in the States, they talk about money. Like, it's almost braggadocious to talk about money. They are very, very open. Here in the UK, it's very un-British to talk money. You just don't. You do not talk about money here in England. And beyond that, I think there's a further reason that sits behind that, in the fact that we do not get this stuff at school.
Yeah.
We just don't. I know for a fact that I never got it in school, and I did my education partly here in the UK and in Africa, in Nigeria, because my parents are Nigerian. But everybody that I've spoken to, most adults do not recall receiving any financial education here in the UK. And it comes back to one common saying, and I say this a lot: you don't know what you don't know till you know you don't know it. So essentially,
Yes.
what happens with most people is they don't get it in school. If they're not from a middle class or privileged sort of home where the parent has learned it in some way, shape, or form, they don't get it from home. And then what then happens is you arrive at adulthood or the beginning of adulthood, and then you're exposed to the banks. And the banks are the ones who are going to sell you your first credit card, give you your first overdraft. However, there's commercial interest in that transaction. So they only give you the information that is required to give you in the due diligence of their job. And I know this because I used to open student credit cards for people. And the big guidance that we had back then was make sure you tell them that they have to make their minimum payment. Okay. There's no explanation of, well, by the way, if you only make your minimum payment on the credit card, that £1,500 that you spent is still going to be outstanding. So you're going to have to find that money at some point. So you're getting this education from the businesses that are there to make money from you. You don't have any prior exposure to that information, if you're really unlucky, to understand, oh, right, this is what APR, annual percentage rate, means. This is how a credit card functions. This is how me using my credit card incorrectly could impact my credit score, because you've never even heard the word credit score. So I think there's a mixture of, number one, just being very un-British, speaking about money, and number two, exposure to the relevant information at the right times in life. It was funny because I was reading a paper about a week or a week and a half ago, and they were saying kids actually form financial habits that set their lives at age 7.
Wow.
If you're not getting this at school, if you're not getting it at school and you're not getting it at home as young as age 7, then you're going to have issues. And this isn't just about financial issues. Mental health also is very closely tied to financial worries. And that's one of the things that I'm very, very, very passionate about. People who are worried about money are 4.5 times more likely to be suffering from depression, 4.8 times more likely to be going through anxiety.
Wow.
You know, these numbers are staggering. And a lot of the time we talk about mental health, but we don't quite give enough respect or credit to the impact that poor financial habits have on mental well-being?
Absolutely. Because being broke or not knowing how to pay the bills is a huge toll, and it's very
Absolutely.
stressful. So very, very true. And talking about credit cards, I got my first credit card in 8, 9 years ago from a
Hmm.
bank I used back then. And it was fine. I knew how much I would spend, and I would like to use it because I will get obvious points. So I was like, oh, I can get cheaper flights. And so I will use my credit card, and the next month I will never spend more than what I could pay. So I was very diligent. And then one day I found out that my I could go under up to 4,000 k, and my salary was not even 2,000. I was like, wait a sec. I called the bank and they didn't want to take it off. I was like, but no, you have such a good credit. You always pay. So, and they kind of like wanted me to get those 4,000. And I was so scared because what if somebody sees my car and then I have 4,000 pounds in debt?
Hmm.
But they were like, no, no, it's very good because you are always paying time. But I don't know how I will get to pay. So, and I didn't have any big expense on site, so I didn't care. And no, I insisted, like, no, I don't want it, and they took it off. But then it got offered to me again a few months later, and I'm like, no, I'm on the same salary, not interested.
Hmm. Yeah. That's called automatic improvements or increases to your credit limit. A lot of the companies will do that, and they say it's there as a as a facility you might need to use in the future. And for me, that's just shows the wrong mentality, because I have fallen into that trap before. I mean, prior to me starting in financial services, I was horrible with money, like really, really, really poor with money. I don't even know how I got my first job in a bank, because my credit score was so bad. I was bouncing checks back then. I was completely irresponsible with money. And they do these things to give you the facility to use it in case you ever need it, but it's sowing the wrong kind of seed for misbehavior. It's allowing you to know that, oh, you know, I might want something, you might be on a spur of a moment, you go and book a holiday, and it's like,
Mm.
you don't actually need that holiday, but because, oh no, I can put it on a credit card and pay for it later. And this is the whole point. We live in a society where, oh yeah, we'll just pay for it later on, and we completely forget the impact that that has on our day-to-day lives. Day-to-day finance is so important, and I'm thankful that I've been in the industry for such a long time, and I've learned so many things now that I'm like, I look back on some of the things that I've bought, or some of the decisions that I've made, particularly when I was working in Canadian Wharf earning a load of money. And I just, it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. And I wish that I hadn't done that. And that's the whole reason why I do what I do now, is to kind of empower people with information so that they can make an informed decision. A lot of the time, people don't go into these things having made an informed decision, because pots of information, the context around information has been missing.
Yeah, yeah. And I would like to add on top of that, that as a therapist, I used to be quite bad at managing money, and despite knowing I will never spend on a credit card if money didn't have, but still somehow I was spending stuff I didn't need or wanted. Oh, this is an offer. And the fact is I discovered because I was feeling not good enough. So I was trying to fill that gap of emptiness, of boredom with stuff, because when you buy stuff, it gives you that dopamine effect.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
feel good, but for how long? 2 hours? Maybe a day if you buy a fancy car. But then that novelty fades away and you need something new, more
Yeah,
shiny. You need to
yeah.
spend more money because it's like an addiction. And so happiness doesn't come from stuff. It literally is like something you need to be happy with what you have. The shoes you bought, you love them, fine, then love them and be happy. But don't buy another one because it's like it's better to have less. Less is more. That's what
I would completely agree with that. And I think there is so much to unpack in just that simple scenario that you've described there, because ultimately all financial decisions, spending habits, are rooted in something. We have to understand what that thing is. So even if I look back over sort of my few years, so in the last 5 years, the most ridiculous things that I bought. So my parents are poor. My parents are Nigerian. They came over here in the 70s. They had me here. I was fostered from 3 months to eight, to just as I was turning 8 years old. They shipped me over to Nigeria. I spent 10 years out in Nigeria. And that's where I kind of really knew the difference between like being okay-ish and having zero money. So with that being my background and never really being taught this in school or by my parents, naturally, as you grow through adulthood and you don't really have much, you kind of get to that point where it's okay, well, when money does come along, you want to treat yourself because that is the right thing to do. And it's that mentality that is very, very damaging. And I say that to say this because I then finally got to work in Canary Wharf. And ever since I started in financial services, I thought, well, if you work in Canary Wharf, you've made it. Like, you're set. And I used to walk around Canary Wharf for years when I was doing music, just thinking this place is amazing. Like watching all the people in suits and just how glamorous it is down in the mall downstairs. Like if you're working here, you're set for life. So to finally get there and to be earning really, really good money, I did the natural thing that anybody would do who didn't have any money growing up, who then earned a load of money. I went and bought some really stupid stuff. I spent £1,000 on a pair of trainers, right? For what? And when I look back at it, if I'm really, really honest with myself, it wasn't because they were great pair of trainers. I've still got them upstairs in the house right now in their box. I've worn them maybe 5-7 times, right? It wasn't because they were lovely trainers and it was kind of like a treat for any work that I had done. It was, I've got to buy these because they're £1,000. I've never
And you
spent
can afford it.
£1,000 on anything. I've got money burning a hole in my bank account, so I'm just going to spend this. And I was more concerned about how it would make me look in front of people when they looked at my feet than actually, is this really good money to be spent? It was all about something else. And I think in whatever walk of life you're in, if you have certain financial habits or certain things that you do with your money, it is always to compensate for something else. And it's really important to understand what that is. For me, it was all about, well, actually, I've never had money. Now that I've got a lot of money coming in, I'm going to spend it stupidly without thinking, really dispassionately. And I'm going to look like the Don by wearing these amazing things. And it was more about the outward image rather than planning life goals. So I want to buy a house. How am I going to go buy a house? Okay, I'm going to need this much money. So why don't I use this £1,000 to put towards that? And in X amount of years' time, I'm going to have a deposit for my house. I wasn't thinking anything like that. And this is where, again, the context is very, very important. What is money here to do? Money is a tool. It's not a commodity. It's not something that you earn and just should run through your fingers. It should be used to build for the future. And that's what I try and teach people now.
Powerful. And it was very interesting what you said about that you could afford those £1,000 trainers, so you got them. And I've been studying the topic about, like, for example, when we get a pay rise, there are two different kind of reactions. A very small percentage of people, when they get a pay rise, they save more money or they invest more money. And then there is the majority. Oh, I have more money, I'm going to just spend more. And there are two types of spending more. You either upgrade the shops or the restaurants where you go, so you go in more fancy ones, or you just go to the same one, but you spend more. Somehow there are some, we have money beliefs. And if you think, they've studied it, we tend to have the same kind of money at the end of the month, even despite having pay rises. We just get bigger cars, bigger houses, and it's crazy. And it's all about the value that we think we are. So it's a bit complex, and maybe we can do a podcast on the mindset. But also, as you said, the stories we learn about money are just stories. Money is nothing apart of an energy. Yes, having money helps you live a better life, no doubt. But the thing is, the stories we learn are the one we learn from our childhood. So if our parents said, like most of our parents say, money doesn't go in tree. You need to work hard for money. Only evil people have money. Then you somehow are ingrained. And there are people who will make money, but somehow they feel guilty. Oh, I must be a bad person because at some sub level deep, even without realizing, they might think I'm a bad person because I have the money. And my parents used to say that, and their parents say that, and the parents of the parents say that. So it's like something that at some point needs to be broken. It's like, I don't want this belief anymore. It's not true. I understand why my parents, my foster, or my school taught me that, but I don't need that. And then you work. When you realize that you have money issues, you need to take responsibility and start to inform yourself. And your channel is great because you give so much information. And like, for example, how important is for people to take an active interest in improving their finances?
It's absolutely paramount. A lot of people that I interact with and the questions that I ask or get asked from people are often very, very basic questions. And I think now that I've been doing it on Instagram for coming up 2 years now, people feel a little bit more comfortable with me to know that I'm not going to ridicule them. But oftentimes the biggest question that people often ask me is, oh, how can I do X, or how can I make X amount of money? And it's like, okay, so the amount of money isn't important. Money is not important. What do you actually want?
Yeah.
So people, I did a coaching session. So I do financial coaching. I work with people one-on-one. And I worked with a lady with Simone. She was on my podcast actually. And we were talking about, okay, so what do you want? And her thing after, first session, talking for about an hour and a half, there was a monetary element that we opened with, was a number. But actually, towards the end of this conversation, after about 90 minutes, it was like, well, so what you actually want actually isn't money. What you want is you want balance. People often want something that's intrinsically more valuable than money itself, right?
Yeah.
So for her, she was like, I want to be able to work a set number of days a week, 4 days a week. I want 3 days off, and I want to be able to do more traveling. Okay, that is tangible, right? That
Yeah.
is something that can be documented down and you can actually quantify. Okay, you want to work Monday to Thursday, have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, and you want to be able to go on holidays. How many holidays you want to go? Maybe 3 holidays, maybe 4. Okay, is that long haul or is that short haul? I'd love to go on one big holiday a year and then maybe do some European local travel. Okay, cool. So then the question becomes, how much money do you need? People often think they need money, but don't really know what they want, what they really, really want. And I know that's a Spice Girls reference, but it just comes out naturally there, right? People don't really know what they really, really want. And you have to be clear on that. So people often ask me and say, how can I make this much money? It's not about the number. It's about what you want. You understanding what you want dictates everything else. So for example, with Simone, we were like, okay, cool. Now let's put some monetary values to what you're saying here. So for that long haul holiday, once a year, where do you want to go? I want to go somewhere tropical, somewhere exotic. Okay, cool. How much do you think that's going to cost? Do some research. Okay, it's going to cost me about this. Boom. Okay, your city breaks in Europe. Where do you want to go? I want to go maybe Ibiza, enjoy my time out there with some friends. Okay, how much is that going to cost? It's going to cost a certain amount of money. You then come to an amount, a very specific amount. And then we have a look at it and say, well, okay, well, where does this come from? And oftentimes people are already earning money. You already have money coming in. So it's all about then funneling what you have to make an allowance for that. It's called budgeting. But people don't look at budgeting in with the mentality that it's there to enable you to do the things that you want to do. Again, it comes back to my previous comment. Money is a tool. It's there to help you do the things that you want to do. Now with Simone, she was self-employed. She's like, okay, so we understand what you've got coming in. Because when people take on coaching with me, I send them a raft of exercises and stuff they need to send back to me. So we know exactly how much you earn. Let's make this number an annual number. Okay, it's quite a big number. Divide that by 12. Okay, this is what you need to find each month. And when you look at it practically in that manner, it's like, well, actually, I can do that. Easy. All I need to do is move some money around, prioritize some money, put it into this bucket, and I can do my holidays and have that balance of 4 days a week, 3 days off. It's not about money. It's about what you want. And people often aren't very clear on what that is.
I never thought in this way. I love it. It's amazing because as you said, as humans, things that we can't count or we can touch are intangible and are confusing. So the fact I want money, but then they realize that actually I have a salary, and if I put this away every month, I can afford to have this style life already instead of putting it like somewhere in the future. Very powerful.
You know what it is though? You kind of alluded to it earlier. The fact that, and I've done this. You earn more money, you upgrade your lifestyle, in
Mm.
opposed to using that money to help you do things. And this is. So I'm a qualified financial advisor. I don't advise currently, but I've worked with very wealthy people, and their mentality is fundamentally different to everybody else. And across everyone that I've ever met who's wealthy, they all have this same mentality.
Which is,
First and foremost, they have money coming in like everybody does, and they channel their money into specific pots. I call it bucketing, right? So they have one bucket for, I need to pay my bills. My bills are this amount every single month. They have that money going in, right? Then they have money for, I like going to, I don't know, play golf twice a week. This costs me this much for my golf membership. Or I want to go on holiday to this place on a regular basis. I want to take 3 holidays this year. Okay. This money's going into that pot. Then what they all have, and this is something we do not do and we do not get taught and we should be doing, is they have a third pot. And that third pot is there for, right, this money, I want to buy a new property. So this money is going to be invested in the future so that I can buy a property, or I can invest in this, or I can do that. I can reduce my tax bill. 3 distinct pots. Most people go through life with 2. Bills, oh, money that I'm just going to spend and have fancy dinners and go on holiday and, birthdays, anniversaries, all these things. We need to be more intentional around how we treat money, how we think of money, and how we deploy money. And these are the things that I try and teach people and coach people. And I guess I'm very, very different. Financial coaching isn't really a big thing here in the UK. It is in America, because they talk about money a lot more. I use a lot of the things that I used to use as a financial advisor with clients. So goal setting. Like, there's no point in us having a conversation if you don't know what you want. Most people think they know, but when they really sit down, so one of the exercises that I ask people to do is I ask them to do like a timeline and say, okay, you're here right now. In 5 years' time, tell me what life looks like. Tell me what you want, and be as detailed as possible. Really, really detailed. Okay, in 5 years' time, I want to have another property. Okay, how much does that property cost you? I want to be able to go on 3-4 holidays a year. Okay, tell me exactly where you want to go. Tell me how much money you're going to need for that. All right, because when we really sit down and we start planning this stuff, there's always going to be a monetary amount. And by knowing what that monetary amount is, we can then work backwards to say, okay, so this is what you're earning right now. In order for you to make that a reality, this is what you need to do. And the coaching centers around that, your goals. What do you want? But again, a lot of the times we think that we know what we want, but we really, really don't, because we don't have it written down. Like my podcast this week, I've got David from another podcast, and they ran a study in Harvard, and apparently only 1 in 3 people actually have their goals written down in
yeah,
detail.
which is more achievable if you write them down, because our mind kind of in a subconscious way, we work towards those goals. It's more likely people achieve them when we write it down.
Absolutely. And this is really, really important. You have to know what you want. Money is a tool. It's not a commodity. I've been guilty of buying some ridiculous stuff because I've literally treated money as a commodity. I've got money coming in. I'm going to spend this much this month. It will be replaced next month. It's like, oh, it's fine. Don't worry. But everybody is literally on the verge of homelessness if you carry on that mentality. And I've been homeless twice. Right? You can have all this money coming in right now. If you do not protect yourself, and this is one of the other things that I talk about a lot as well, is you need to consider your entire picture. It is about what you want, but how do you also protect yourself? Because regardless of where you are today, you came from somewhere.
Yeah.
If you're earning all of this money and you get into an accident, or you get a sickness or an illness, your income stream could be stopped immediately. And we've all found out through COVID that statutory sick pay at £96.78 or whatever it is not enough for a lot of people to live on. So that car that you're paying for, those restaurants that you like going to, isn't going to be sustainable if you don't use your money adequately. And again, wealthy people that I work with, they know this fully well. They pay for insurance policies to help them make sure that regardless of how much money they have in the bank, they're not utilizing their own money, that they've accumulated over years and years and years of running business and working in companies to prop up their lifestyle if they're unable to work. Like, who does that? No. But these are mentality shifts that we all need to have. How do you utilize your money? You've got money coming in right now. It is about planning for the future, but it's also about protecting your present.
Yeah.
So what insurances do you need? So just in case you do have an accident, you're unable to work, how do you replace your income? Do you have an insurance policy that's going to pay you your income until you're till age 65, until retirement? Do you have an insurance policy that is going to replace or pay out 200, 300, 400,000 pounds, depending on how much you select? These are all things that we need to have in place and accounted for in the money that we earn. It's not commonly taught though. And this is the stuff that I'm trying to get people to kind of embed into their own personal finances.
Yeah. And I heard about another practice to divide, like every month put a set aside for like also fun, because it's life is also supposed to be fun. So we also need to budget that bit. And maybe it means that we realize, actually, I can't go to the pub 4 times a month this month because blah, blah, blah. And so you go less, but you still go because you have that set. Like nowadays we have all these bank challenges, no? So like Monzo, Starling, I have both and I love them. Free accounts, and they allow you to put things in pots. And I have my fun pot. So once the money is gone, it's gone. So I won't spend any more in fun. My fun is going to go for a run or meet in the park with a friend, but it will be something super low budget because I already spent the fun part, no?
Absolutely. And that's, so when people come to me coaching, a lot of them are like, oh my God, I hope you don't tell me that I need to cut back on a load of stuff. So I'm a firm believer in balance. If you're going to work 9 to 5, particularly if you're going to a 9 to 5 where you absolutely hate it, and trust me, there's a large population of people who go to work every single day who absolutely hate it. So my philosophy is, if you're in that situation, you need to get balance and you need to be intentional. Because why would you put yourself in a position where you're going to a 9 to 5 that you may not necessarily like, have all this money coming in, and have absolutely nothing to show for it?
Yeah.
Why? So in seeking balance, you need to make sure that, okay, I've got to pay for all of my necessities. And it comes back to those 3 pots. Your necessities, pot 1. Pot number 2 is, right, I like doing X, Y, Z. So I'm going to put some money aside for that specifically. Okay, you've done that. Pot 3 is, right, how do I build for the future? You need to have that balance. And sometimes I haven't worked with a client yet where I've been like, you definitely need to cut this out, because it hasn't got round to that at the moment. I always enter with the fact of like, what do you do? What do you enjoy doing? And try to understand the mentality that they have around money. And from then we work out and say, well, actually, you know what? If you enjoy doing this, we need to make sure that it's a priority. Because if that is the thing that makes everything worthwhile, depriving you of that is only going to do more harm than good. Because then it becomes way too painful for you to carry on any recommendations that you might get from coaching. So striking that balance is so important, because what we're trying to do here is frame you into positive outcomes, which is why, again, what do you want? What do you really, really, really want? What are your goals? We understand that. Then we're like, okay, well, if you do this, you're going to get there. Most people are more likely to take a course of action if they know there's a reward at the end, not if, well,
I'm like that.
I've got to make the sacrifice. It's going to be really, really painful, but they don't know why they're doing it. If you give them a good reason to do it, they will absolutely do it. It's human nature. And that's really, really, it's an important notion that I always work with. And that's my psychology around it. It's the fact that you have to kind of get balance, and you have to allow for the things that you enjoy doing.
Absolutely. And talking about people who hate their job or dislike their job, I had a client once, and she was working in this company, and it was a good salary, but she didn't love it. And when she went to another interview about a job she really wanted, because she was going to organize all events and chat with the people, chat with the catering, be much more interactive, move a lot in the office, and it's a cultural center. So she wanted to get away a bit of the business corporation side of the business and get into something more artistic. And at the interview, they said, we won't be able to match your current salary. And she was like, no, but I really love the job, and she explained it. After we had a session together, she was okay to say, I really like this and this and that. And honestly, I'm happy to cut a bit of the salary. And this was 2-3 years ago. I spoke to her recently when I was checking on her, and she's happy. And even if she hasn't reached her old salary, she loves her job. Turns out that she's having the same style of life, because once you're happy in your job, you don't need other things to distract you, to feel that, oh, I hate my life, I need to get drunk, or I don't know, or other stuff like drugs or buy stuff. You're just more serene with yourself, you're balanced, and so you're happy with simpler things, because I'm a believer that happiness in the simpler things, in daily small things. That's where happiness stands. But this is a long conversation for another time. But
I'll tell you what it is though, Janine. I think that ultimately there is a little bit of life experience that comes into the fact that, and social media doesn't help, that the only thing that really matters in life is happiness. That's the only thing that matters.
Which we work for. We want the money to be happier or more balanced, but it's happiness. But it's not a destination.
Yeah, because I think things like social media now highlight materialism as happiness. Oh yeah, and again on my podcast, I cover so much on my podcast. So this week we're actually talking about breaking free from the 9 to 5. Last week we were talking about the emotional side of money, and the lady that I had on was talking about the fact of, when you talk about money, there are so many emotional responses. So if you're on Instagram and if you're in your 20s or your early 30s and you see one of your classmates who's on a luxurious holiday in Dubai, there is an instant emotional reaction that you're going to see by that if you're not set right in a mindset point of view, right? It could be jealousy, it could be envy, it could be, oh my God, I feel like a failure, why can't I do that? And that then triggers oh, maybe I need to look at a good holiday. And then the happiness becomes murky, because we need to remember, we don't know or understand the exact circumstances that all these people post on social media are in. A lot of them will go to luxury stores, buy stuff, return them straight away, just for the picture, right? A lot of people will go to Dubai and they'll, stand in front of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bentley and act like it's their car, but it's not their car. Or they'll just go to a showroom and be like, can I test drive this? Take a few snaps, boom, 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 and then put that on social media. And everybody, that outward perception is fake. Yeah. And I think it's really, really important for us to be able to regulate the intake of that kind of information and really understand what makes us happy, which comes back to the question again, what do you want? What's your life goal? If you don't know what it is, maybe you need a little bit of help nudging you towards what really matters. And I've certainly come to the realization now, full circle. I'm 40. I've spent a lot of money on just really stupid stuff. And unfortunately, if I had invested that money and had my mindset, back then, if I'd just invested in the markets, I'd be sitting on so much money right now. But the mindset was wrong. The education was wrong. The outlook of life was wrong. The understanding of the purpose of money as a tool was completely wrong, because it wasn't embedded in me when I was a kid. It just wasn't there. I've learned by experience.
Yeah. And talking about investing, that was the purpose of our chat today, but then we talk about more mindset and stuff. But as we are running short on time, I would love to have you again to talk about investing and stock market. Awesome. Yeah. Because that's something you are very good, and there are so many videos on YouTube where you explain all the inside out, and it's great. So unfortunately, that was the original topic, but then we got sidetracked. But actually, I love today's interview. It's been so interesting. And the fact I love the most, that make it tangible. What do you want? and then save towards that. So guys, try this technique out and think about what you want, what it is that you think you want, and then save towards it. And maybe you might realize that you need less months or less money to get that experience or that thing you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to seek help. I mean, I say this all the time, and this is kind of like a flippant comment that I use often. You know, there are a lot of people that are putting out content, and actually some of them are very, very good. But I always use this analogy. If you're going to have a root canal done, you don't go to an optician. You go to a qualified dentist, right? And by a qualified dentist, you don't go to someone who's just read a dentistry book or watched some YouTube videos about dentistry. You go to someone who actually is qualified and knows the nuances that can be applied to your situation. Now, with financial coaching, it's not advice. My job is to kind of like understand where your mindset is and try and nudge you into a different direction. Understand what your goals are, understand what money you're earning, so that you can start to picture how you can use that to build for the future. And I will provide you with some recommendations saying, look, these are the kind of things that you need to be thinking about. Right? By doing this, you're going to get this. It's going to take you this long if you do that. Now, I don't specifically talk about investment specifically in the coaching program, but it is a starting place for anybody who just is like, I've got money coming in. I don't really know what to do. And that's often what I get. I've got money coming in. I don't really know what to do. I know I need to buy a house. I know I need to tackle my debt. I know I need to do some very specific things, but they just don't know where to begin. And that's where financial coaching basically comes in. So, don't feel afraid to ask for help and to seek out assistance, because it is really important. And, you're better off doing this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Pete, it was amazing to have you today on my podcast show. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions you would like to ask next time when I interview Pete again, write in the comments below. So I will make sure to ask all the questions. And thank you very so much for the wisdom, for sharing with us. How can people reach out to you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm on Conversation of Money. So it's all one word. On YouTube, it's exactly the same, Conversation of Money. My podcast is called The Conversation of Money Podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, but Apple and Spotify are the main ones, but it's Conversation of Money. It's all one word. You'll be able to find me on my socials.
Awesome. Thank you ever so much again.
Thank you.
And I wish you all a lovely day. Ciao.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ciao. Cheers.